Welcome to In Studio from Simply Timeless. I'm your host, Jay Daniels. Our guest this week is Philadelphia vocalist Michelle Lordi. Recently, she released her latest album. It's called Break Up with the Sound, but it's not exactly the breakup album that you might think it is. During the interview, we'll talk about that album, along with some of the early musical influences that had an impact upon Michelle's life. Here's Michelle Lordi.
Well, I was an only child, and every holiday and summer vacation, my mother would send me down to visit my grandmother in Portsmouth. And there wasn't a lot to do, so I spent a lot of time in her apartment building and hanging out with the other people who lived there. Everybody was over 60 or 65, and she had a hi-fi, and it was filled with albums from that were hers. Everything from Joe Stafford and Patsy Cline, and I ended up listening to my grandmother's music and falling in love with especially Patsy Cline, and it was sort of a gateway into a love for vocal music. You know, I grew up around my grandmother, who introduced me to some really, really fine vocalists from the 40s, 50s, even 30s. And then in my social life as a teenager, I listened to a lot of hardcore and punk and new wave music. The Talking Heads were a really, really important band for me growing up. I loved a story. I mean, I liked anything that had a story.
And your own life's experiences have certainly helped you to tell a story along the way. This last album that you just put out, it's called Break Up with the Sound. It's an independent release that just came out at the end of last year. And as we mentioned, it has some standards, but also some originals. And the phrasing that I think of when I think of your story behind this album came out of the ashes, so to speak. You had done a great deal of writing all throughout your life in journals. Whatever happened to those stories? Whatever happened to those journals?
They're gone, but they never were made into music. I had a lot, like you said, I had a lot of poetry and journals filled with song ideas. And through the years, people would ask me, do you write music? And I'd say, no, there's plenty of standards. But I was scheming. In the background, I was thinking about songs. There were melodies in my head and even some completed music. And in December of 2017, the day after Christmas, we were having a early birthday party for my now 3-year-old, and the fire alarms went off. We ended up, our whole house burnt down. No one was hurt, but we lost everything, including all of the music that I had been working on but never put out. And what I learned from that is that what I was so sad about was not that I lost the music, it was that I hadn't put it out. So, for good or bad, I didn't put it out because I wasn't sure it was good. And now I know that it would have been better to put it out than to not ever know. So, when I started to go into the writing process after the fire and decided that I did want to be a songwriter and bring some of these songs that I had written back from the ashes and write some new ones, I felt freer. I figured even if it's not a hit, it's okay, because it's better than not doing it at all. And it took me a long time to figure that out, but I'm glad I'm there, and it's been easy to write ever since.
I'm thinking about your early musical influences, and you and I share a great love of Patsy Cline, obviously. And in looking over the track titles for this album, there are 2 songs that I remember first hearing from Patsy. The Wayward Wind, which was a Gogi Grant song originally, and True Love from High Society by Cole Porter. But then throughout the entire album, you have quite a stellar ensemble. Donnie McCaslin on tenor saxophone, Tim Mozer on guitar, Matthew Parrish on bass, and Rudy Royston on drums. I'm not exactly sure what the proper adjective would be to describe the space. It's a very open, as you said, with putting out your own writing, a very freeing space. Not saying that the music is so free that there's no cohesion. I think it's a very cohesive album. But you were talking about your distinctly different musical influences. You had your country, classic pop influences from your grandmother, and then punk rock as a teen. And yet I think there are some common elements that come together in this album. Not only does it seem to tell a story from beginning to end, but there is also a common sound throughout. As I like to often ask, think about a recipe. What are the ingredients for this particular sound that you have with the ensemble?
Well, I would say the ingredients are mainly the musicians I picked. And the main ingredient, I would say, are the songs we chose to add together, and the influence and skill of the producer and arranger Matthew Parrish, bassist, as well. The album, we couldn't be done without him, because he was able to take my artistic concepts and link them from songs as varied as a standard like Loverman to an original that is a completely I'd say non-jazz oriented song like Before, and give enough space that everybody had room to develop the soundscape. And I really think of it as like a landscape. But I would say Matt was really important to that process as a producer. I never felt restrained. And I think the musicians definitely were allowed to play and really be themselves within that landscape.
You are listening to In Studio from Simply Timeless. I'm your host, Jay Daniels. There's quite a story about how you were able to get Donnie McCaslin to work with you, as far as simply asking him, I suppose, to be on the album. It was something that you were unsure if he would even be willing to play with you.
I think as an independent artist, no label, no real, I had a couple albums before, but not a very firm footing in the jazz idiom. I'm on my own. And I had a conversation with Donnie at a really interesting event where he was giving a master class. And we had a conversation about blurring that line between jazz and other genres, where he referenced David Bowie, who, of course, was very important to Donnie's career, because David Bowie chose Donnie and his band to be the band for David's last album, Black Star, which won, I think, tons of Grammys. And he said that what David Bowie would say about genres is not to worry about genres, is just to go make art. And for me, hearing that from him was very important, because a long time ago, I knew how to make art. I went to school for photography. Visual art is my background as a visual artist is very important to me. And many years have gone by between when I thought of life as that and as an expression of art. As much as I love music, it was often what do people want until this album. Even the last album I did, which I love very much, it was because I wanted to do the album Dream a Little Dream because I wanted to honor my teachers. The album Break Up With the Sound I did because I wanted to create a piece of artwork. And for whatever you think, I do believe that we were able to be expressive and create a piece of artwork, just like David Bowie says, you go for the art, don't worry about the genre. Now, The issue is not everybody is as creative as Jay Daniels and his show. So it's a little hard to maybe find a footing in jazz radio, but I'm really happy that you've found a place for it here.
You talked about this blurring of genres, which I thought about this on the way down, listening to your album. I said to myself, if people really just wanted to hear jazz in its pure, unadulterated form, we'd be going back to the recordings of like the original Dixieland Jazz Band. And even then it'd be like, well, is that really pure? So in thinking about that, some people have said about the title of your album, Break Up With the Sound, that you are wanting to break up with the traditional jazz sound. What have you to say about that?
Jay, I'm really glad you bring that up because that is not my intention. I may turn around and do an album of a trio album of Gershwin standards next. I who knows? I love jazz. Break Up With the Sound, the title of the album, actually comes from it's a reference from my original Poor Bird, which is an answer song to Hank Williams' I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry. I know you said that you're a big fan of Hank Williams, and I think there are people who say that I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry is one of the saddest country songs ever written, and that's saying a lot considering how sad so many country songs are. But when I heard it, I heard not, you've lost your dog, you lost your girl. I hear that, you're lost, and you're lost in a universe that doesn't care about you in that song. That's what I hear. What I took away from that song is that you could live there. You can live there as an artist. You can live in the sadness of our times. You can live in the morass of circumstances, or you can pick yourself up and move on. And there's a specific line in I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry. He says, hear that lonesome whippoorwill, he sounds too blue to fly. And that really hit me because if you're a bird and you don't fly, are you still a bird? And as an artist, if you're an artist but you're so sad that you can't create, are you really even an artist? So Break Up With the Sound is the idea that bird is me, and I'm breaking up with the sound of sadness and of being stuck. And so that's what the title's really about. It is not a breakup with the music that I love so much. It's a breakup with the things that are keeping me from making music.
And we think about this connection between the classic sound of jazz and a more contemporary sound, where you do find elements of R&B, of country music, of modern pop. And I love this word, and I think I'll use it as often as I can. This album is an amalgamation of all these things put together. Do you think, without being too egocentric, do you think that this album helps to continue a forward movement in the natural evolution of jazz music?
I can only speak for my own musical evolution, and it is really important to me. I don't what it means for any other artists or the genre at all. No, but I think for me, it was very important to make music based on a concept of creating art and not worrying about who was listening. I didn't have a listener in mind when I made this. I also have 4 originals, and while we're mentioning it, Double Crossed was written with Tim Motzer. Poor Bird is arranged by Matthew Parrish. I did have co-writers on those, but it was really important for me to get original material out for my own musical development.
If there were one lesson that you would share with women who are seeking to express themselves, who are trying to find those ways to put their feelings into words and to music, If there were one lesson that you would give them, one piece of insight, what would that be?
I would say create your own opportunities. Don't wait for opportunities to be created for you. Don't wait for a label. Don't wait for the right publicist. Don't wait for the right radio rep. Just go and make your own connections. Connect with other artists as an artist. And don't wait. I would say really don't wait. Women have so many obligations. As a woman artist, it becomes even more heady. So I would say that it's just important not to get bogged down. And if you don't have a gig, then create one.
Michelle Lordi, our in-studio guest from Simply Timeless. You can find out more about her album, Break Up With The Sound, by visiting her website. That address, Michelle Lordi, Lordi, MichelleLordi.com. Thanks to Michelle and also to the Zen Den of Doylestown, Pennsylvania, for allowing us to record our in-studio interview in their space. Until we meet again, my name is Jay Daniels. Thank you for joining us in studio.